like how
we strengthen our crafts? Like how do we strengthen our crafts? And what are those?
Oh.
Like, how have you?
Mm.
Well, so this has been a really interesting couple of years because everything has moved really fast. Like what I'm working on right now, which sounds really silly, but I have a business coach, right? And she's really a cool person. She's just a holistically cool person. And I feel really scattered a lot because I'm on the road and I'm not home. And man, when literally I would record this album for 4 days, we would leave for like 6 weeks, and then right when we got home, we would go back. Like it was very not probably the way I would ideally want to do something, but I really like the way the album turned out, so I was happy with it. But one thing I wanted to start working on is getting some daily routines, which is super duper hard if you're not home. And so my goal right now is in the morning I do a little devotional of a Buddhist one and 2 different Christian ones, and I write a couple thoughts about it, and then I write the 3 things I would like to do that day, get done, and that's literally what I'm working on right now, because I'm also the kind of person that has 6 different personal development goals at one time, and then I fail at all of them, and I'm like, oh, crap, I suck, you know what I mean? So then focusing on just one thing has helped me to be well, if I can do this one thing, then later I'll think about other things. But in terms of my own craft, I guess, just learning to trust. I mean, I know that's weird, but in the recording studio, I'm really glad that I worked with Al Church and Dave Mailing, but part of the reason I asked him at the beginning was because I didn't trust that I would know how to explain what I wanted, and as I got more comfortable, I did. So now I think the next goal, or the next thing I'm going to work on is when I write songs, just think more about what I want them to sound like someday on a recording, just to think in a different way. And then in terms of practice, I warm up my voice a little bit before shows and stuff, but we're on the road. I mean, again, being on the road really screws up your ability to do personal development things in the moment. But I'm doing that's why I switched to I'm doing my own booking right now, partly for accessibility purposes. I kept getting booked in inaccessible venues, but then partly because I really want to design a life that feels more balanced in the long run, so that I can be home and think about what things I want to grow on in music and how I can develop. I mean, playing every day certainly helps, but just there's other things I want to explore, other instruments or other looping pedals or whatever, and I want to give myself time for that. And so I think, especially as a female, or maybe just our generation of millennials, although I hate that word, but I think the idea of designing, kind of thinking outside the box and being okay, everybody says you have to have a booking agent and you have to do it this way and this is what you have to do, but I'm what if I was just gone a couple weeks at a time, a few times a year, and then did regional stuff? Is there a reason that would be bad, And so it's trying to figure out what would work. This year's an album release year, so it's just what it is. I'm just gonna be gone all the time. But next year, I'm thinking ahead to how to plan your life so you have room to grow when you're not touring. And I don't know what that will look like. That's a terrible answer, but it's the honest answer. Okay. So what about you? What are you doing to hone your craft or whatever?
You're a hard worker. Physically, I try to work out every day. I don't work out too much. It's bad. I dance a lot. I dance a whole lot, and that's working out. So I try to dance every day, and also I pray every day. That's my ritual. I pray every day, no matter what, even if it's just over my food. I don't know. I like to talk to somebody. It's nice. It's nice to have that spirit with you. And as far as artistically, I'm always one in the studio. I'm in the studio right now with my boy Lee. Again, Lee Clark can play with me. And we're actually working on a project called Realms, and that's been my focus artistically. And my idea is how do I strengthen this project because we put out one project last year, and that was our only other project. And I'm like, how do I strengthen this project to make it be the best it can be? And that's adding all the elements of Kingsley, literally, you know. So this idea of realms. And realms is real quick. Realms is right. Realms can be a kingdom or a galaxy, right? That's a realm, you know, or a threshold, you know. But I'm like, yo, what if you take realms further? What if you say your perspective is a realm and my perspective is a realm, and we can travel through those emotions are realms, people are realms. You know, the weather is a different realm, like when it changes, you know. So I want to take that and put it into an album, and I'm gonna an album with an EP, and see how I reflected on myself, see what my realms are, you know, just a couple of them. So within the album, I talk about, or EP, I talk about love, of course, you know, tragedy, loyalty, and then the safe space, you know what I mean? And always coming back to that safe space of no matter what I go through, this is the space I come back to. And with that, I've been adding elements to it as far as dance, and I'm writing a play for it. I'm writing a little play for it, and it's going to be like just enough to connect all the dots and connect all the storyline of, because right now when you listen to it, it's cool, it's nice, and it flows well. But now I want to add poems. These poems I write, right? And I want to turn them, because Shakespeare writes his scripts are poems, right? So I was like, I can do that. That's easy. So I write these poems and I turn them into scripts, and now I can do this in venues and museums and bars and whatnot, you know. And that is just me adding on. It's like, this is me. I'm a thespian, you know what I mean? I'm a singer and I'm a dancer. It's like, why not put those elements in the music scene, right? You know what I mean? While people are just playing the music, it's like, I can be Kingsley, you know. I can give you a whole show, and you'll still be entertained, and you'll still feel something, and you'll still learn something, and you'll still, you know. That's what I've been working on. That's all I got.
Developing Wagner has the concept of the Kunstwerk, which is the total art, the blending of theater and poetry, music and jazz.
Oh, wow.
You're doing the Kingsley Kunstwerk.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
Could you write his name down for me before after we get? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah?
Did you have one?
Well, I just wanted to respond to something you've mentioned prayer twice now, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you felt comfortable, could you elaborate a little bit on, were you raised with a religious practice, or do you have a religious practice now?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I was raised Episcopalian, and in the church. I didn't grow up singing, actually, yeah, I believe in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and I just believe in that's what I was raised up believing, but right now I believe in the Spirit. You know, the Spirit is it's not anybody. The Spirit is who you go to, who you speak to, whom you draw strength from, whom you know. So I think that's the power I receive, and of course, you know, I have influences from church. You know, so you know there are certain things, like I do say Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but that doesn't mean I mean Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but it means I am talking to a Lord, you know, a Lord of this world, you know, and that's what I believe in. I believe in.
I really love that. Both of you, it's sort of, you've articulated yourselves as conduits to an extent. You know, you say, I'm writing, I get an idea about where your ideas come from. You know, you're getting out of the way of the idea. And I like the sound that you made of what that sound. Yeah. I'll show you the reverb.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What it would sound like with reverb, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, then this is a question for you, Melissa. My name is Bennett. Thank you for coming here as family in Minneapolis.
Does this mic go all the way?
Minnesota is extra special. I can just talk loud, I think.
Okay, I think I'm picking you up from here. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But I'll move back.
A mutual friend of Jim and I, Daniel Fishkin, is an artist.
Daniel Fishkin.
Who works a lot on tinnitus. He has tinnitus. I met him because I have tinnitus. And he recommended a book to me, and part of our working together that was about disability in music. It's called Extraordinary Measures by the author Jeremy Strauss. And it's about like Western classical music, which is not something that I practice, so I couldn't really get at, I feel like, the meat of the book. But there were parts of it that were really important to me lastingly. One of them kind kind of talks about the ways that disability in history has been thought about or figured as either an affliction, like a punishment from God that you have to atone for your whole life and try to overcome, or an afflatus, like some great, actually, superpower that helps you do something besides the thing that you were disabled to be able to do, extra good. Like the blind person can somehow hear ever more perceptively or something like that. And so these are like the two narratives that we hold from history of what disability is and how it works. And that music is actually often like the kind of playground for rehearsing these narratives, for celebrating heroes in them and in one direction or the other, either the tragic hero who's afflicted by disability or this others, who overcomes disability, whatever it is. And these are like the really familiar narratives. What I look for as someone who is diagnosed with bipolar disorder, diagnosed with tinnitus, what I look for in the world is often like other models of creativity that challenge these. So my question to you is like, what is it like working now in that climate historically? How do you feel like your work is being received usually? Is it hard to manage that? Like, do you feel like you get pigeonholed into those two types of categories ever? And how can we kind of be allies to you in your effort to not get pigeonholed in any which way?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really thoughtful question, so thank you for that. So I have a lot of thoughts about this, obviously, and I don't think I have any solid answers except for what I can put out into the world. I do feel that if there was one narrative that got told more than others, it's like somehow she figured out how to play, and then that's like kind of where the story ends. And it's like, well, to me, if I could control the narrative, I wouldn't leave that part out, only because we live in a society where lots of little kids get told they can't play instruments by their teachers. And I want teachers to hear that I had a teacher that taught me anyways, and taught me differently. I wish that wasn't something that had to be brought up all the time, because I don't think like Sheryl Crow is talking about her first teacher all the time, right? But it's still an issue, and I think in the world we live in right now, that should be part of the dialogue. But then there's so many other things, and the thing I kind of force the dialogue to go to in interviews, for example, is accessibility and the arts. And like the reason we don't think there are disabled artists out there is because it's like 20 times harder to tour right now. It's really not easy. And I'm not saying like it's impossible, because it's certainly not. I know other artists with disabilities that do it, but a lot of venues are off limits because they're not accessible. A lot of hotels are not feasible. A lot of like travel accommodations just don't work or are harder to get. Cabs, airplanes, all these things. So it's like not as easy to tour if you have a disability. But that's changeable, right? Like that's something we can fix. Most problems we think of when we talk about disability are man-made. And then things like chronic illness, which, or mental illness, or any of those things that are not like outside, are, to me, I like to think of disability as a form of diversity. So like in the same way that I wouldn't be like, that poor guy was born black. Like what? Like in 2018 you wouldn't say that, but for some reason we can still say that about disability. And I think if you reframe disability entirely to be about a bodily, like a different form of human diversity, it takes away a lot of that negative language and stigma that we use. And that is what I would like my musical discussion to be based around. I really do think it's important to have people with disabilities in the media. Again, eventually I hope that's not something I have to keep trying to